First Contact's Aftermath. The hegemony's first message arrived on a Tuesday. It came not through radio waves or traditional communication channels, but through quantum entanglement devices they had secretly placed in every major city on Earth. The message was simple: submit or be erased. Captain Sarah Chen stood in the Pentagon's Emergency Command Center, watching the alien ships materialize in high orbit. Their massive forms blotted out the stars, curved hulls gleaming with an iridescent sheen that defied Earth's most advanced material science. As Earth's foremost expert in experimental weapon systems, she should have been terrified. Instead, she felt an odd sense of calm. "Their energy readings are off the charts," muttered Dr. James Rodriguez, his eyes fixed on the holographic display. "Those shields could probably withstand a direct nuclear strike." As the chief physicist for the military's Advanced Defense Division, his assessment carried weight. But Sarah noticed something he hadn't. "Look at the emission patterns," she said, pointing to the fluctuating energy signatures. "They're running their shields continuously. No cycling, no modulation. That's inefficient." She paused, mind racing through possibilities. And arrogant. The hegemony's ambassador, a tall, crystalline being who called itself First Speaker Lissix, had appeared simultaneously in every UN member state's capital. Its translucent form shifted colors as it spoke, a visual display that their xenolinguists theorized represented emotional states. "Your species is young," it had declared, its form pulsing with what they assumed was condescension. "Your weapons are primitive. Your understanding of the universe is limited. The hegemony offers you the chance to join our collective as a protectorate race. Resist, and we will demonstrate true power." To emphasize their point, one of their ships had casually vaporized an uninhabited island in the Pacific. The energy beam had ignored all known laws of physics, turning several cubic kilometers of matter into pure energy in seconds. But Sarah had noticed something then too. Something in the way their weapon had interfered with Earth's magnetic field. Something that sparked an idea. "General Morrison," she said, turning to face the stern-faced woman who commanded Earth's combined defense forces, "I need access to the Prometheus Project." Morrison's eyes widened slightly. The Prometheus Project was her experimental division's most closely guarded secret, a new type of hybrid weapons system that combined conventional kinetic weapons with bleeding-edge quantum field manipulation. It wasn't ready. The power requirements were enormous. The targeting systems still experimental. "Absolutely not," Morrison replied. "It's untested, unstable, and exactly what we need," Sarah interrupted, pulling up her latest test results. "Look at these readings from the hegemony shield demonstration. Their entire defensive system operates on a quantum principle similar to our research, but they've clearly never faced anything like what we're developing." Rodriguez leaned in, his skepticism giving way to interest as he studied the data. "The resonance patterns, they're using a fixed-state quantum field. If we could match the frequency and introduce a controlled phase shift, we could create a cascading failure in their shields," Sarah finished. "Their own arrogance is their weakness. They're so convinced of their technological superiority that they've never considered someone might attack the fundamental principles their systems are built on." Morrison was quiet for a long moment, studying the orbital displays as more hegemony ships arrived. Earth's conventional forces wouldn't stand a chance against such overwhelming firepower. But if Sarah was right, "You have 48 hours, Morrison said finally. "Show me what Prometheus can do." Sarah was already moving, her mind racing through the modifications they'd need. The hegemony thought humanity was primitive, relying on crude kinetic weapons and simplistic ballistic physics. They were about to learn that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in our technology, but in our ability to innovate, to take what we had and transform it into something unprecedented. In the labs beneath the Pentagon, Sarah's team worked frantically to modify their prototype. The basic framework was an M1A3 Abrams tank, but that was like calling a quantum computer a calculator. They had stripped it down and rebuilt it from the ground up, integrating experimental quantum field generators with conventional weapons systems in ways that defied traditional military doctrine. They think we're primitive because we still use tanks and bullets, Sarah explained to her team as they worked. But that's because they fundamentally misunderstand humanity. We don't abandon tools that work. We improve them. We adapt. We evolve. The hegemony had given Earth 1 week to submit to their rule. They expected humanity to either surrender in fear or attempt some futile resistance with our primitive weapons. They weren't prepared for what Sarah and her team were about to unleash. As the deadline approached, Sarah stood before her modified tank, now designated XM-1P Prometheus. Its conventional armor had been augmented with quantum field generators, its main gun modified to fire shells that could interact with and disrupt enemy shield frequencies. It looked like a normal Abrams at first glance, and that was exactly the point. They expect us to be primitive, she told Morrison during the final inspection. So let's show them just how dangerous primitive can be when it's wielded by humans who refuse to accept defeat. The hegemony ships hung in orbit like sword of Damocles, their weapons primed to reduce Earth's military forces to ash. But in labs and bases around the world, humanity was preparing a response that would shake their confidence to its core. The true test was about to begin, and Sarah couldn't help but smile as she thought about the look on their faces when they realized just how badly they had underestimated humanity's potential. The next 48 hours would determine the fate of Earth. But more than that, they would prove that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't our technology. It was our relentless drive to overcome any obstacle, to find solutions where none seemed possible, and to never, ever give up in the face of impossible odds. The hidden edge. Time was running out. In the cavernous underground facility known as Site Omega, Sarah Chen's team worked around the clock, pushing the boundaries of what was possible. The modified Abrams tanks, now designated as XM-1P units, lined the testing chamber like sleeping giants. Each one represented humanity's defiant response to the hegemony's ultimatum. The quantum field modulators are stabilizing, Dr. Rodriguez announced, his eyes fixed on streams of data flowing across holographic displays. We're seeing a 97% match with the hegemony's shield frequencies. Sarah nodded, but her attention was on the practical implications. Theory was one thing, combat effectiveness was another. Show me the penetration tests. The main screen shifted to show high-speed footage from their latest trials. A modified tank shell, carrying their experimental quantum disruptor payload, struck a generated field identical to the hegemony shields. For a fraction of a second, nothing happened. Then reality itself seemed to shudder as the two quantum fields interacted, creating a cascading failure that ripped a hole in the supposedly impenetrable barrier. It's not just working, Sarah said, allowing herself a small smile. It's working better than we predicted. The feedback loop is amplifying the disruption effect. Major David Park, her chief tactical officer, stepped forward. The hegemony's overconfidence is their weakness. They've been the dominant force in their region of space for so long that they've stopped innovating. Their technology is powerful, but it's stagnant. And predictable, Sarah added. Every demonstration they've given us, every threat display, has shown us exactly how their systems work. They're so convinced of their superiority that they never considered we might be learning from them. The facility rumbled as another test firing commenced. This time, they were pushing the limits of their modifications. The ground shook as the XM-1P's main gun roared, sending a specially modified shell downrange. The projectile wasn't just designed to penetrate shields. It carried a payload that would turn the hegemony's own defensive technology against them. Impact in 3, 2, 1. The test shield didn't just fail. It collapsed in a spectacular cascade of quantum energy that set off every sensor in the facility. When the dust settled, the reinforced target bunker had a hole cleaned through its supposedly impenetrable walls. "Holy shit," someone whispered. Sarah was already moving, calling up detailed analysis of the test. The quantum cascade effect is propagating exactly as theorized. Once their shields are breached, the energy backflow will disable their entire defensive grid. They've built their whole military doctrine around being untouchable. What happens when suddenly they're not? But there was more to their strategy than just shield penetration. While Sarah's team worked on the weapons systems, other facilities around the world were developing their own innovations. In Australia, scientists had reverse-engineered aspects of the hegemony's communication systems. In Brazil, a team had cracked the underlying principles of their sensor technology. Each discovery was shared globally, humanity setting aside its differences in the face of extinction. We're not just fighting their technology, Sarah explained during a briefing with military leaders from around the world. We're fighting their entire worldview. They see us as primitive because we still use physical projectiles and kinetic weapons. But we're about to show them that sometimes the old ways, combined with new understanding, can overcome even the most advanced technology. The modified tanks were only part of the equation. Sarah's team had developed a whole suite of hybrid weapons. Artillery shells that could disrupt alien energy fields, anti-aircraft systems that could track and target their supposedly untraceable ships, and defensive systems that could protect against their energy weapons. The key is unpredictability, she continued. They expect us to either cower in fear or charge straight at them. Instead, we're going to show them something they've never seen before: humanity's ability to adapt and innovate in ways they can't anticipate. As the deadline approached, Earth's military forces began to mobilize. The modified tanks were distributed to key strategic locations, their crews training day and night to master the new systems. But they kept the modifications hidden, making the vehicles appear as primitive as the hegemony expected. "Let them think we're desperate," General Morrison had said. "Let them think we're throwing outdated technology at them in a last-ditch effort. The look on their faces when they realize what we've actually done will be worth it." Sarah spent the final hours before the deadline in the command center, monitoring the global deployment of their forces. The hegemony ships still hung in orbit, their weapons primed and ready. But they had no idea that Earth's surface was now dotted with weapons specifically designed to counter their technology. "They gave us a week, thinking we'd either surrender or prepare some futile resistance," she said to Rodriguez as they watched the final preparations. "Instead, we've used that time to completely change the rules of engagement. They think they're gods coming down to smite the primitives. We're about to remind them that humanity has a long history of killing gods." The countdown to the deadline continued, each second bringing them closer to the moment of truth. But Sarah wasn't afraid anymore. She looked at the data flowing across her screens, at the reports coming in from military forces around the world, and she knew humanity wasn't just ready for this fight. "We were about to show the galaxy exactly why you should never underestimate our species." As the sun set on humanity's last day of peace, Sarah ran her hand along the hull of the nearest XM-1P. The metal was cool under her fingers. Familiar, yet now housing technology that would have seemed like magic just weeks ago. "They think they know what we're capable of," she whispered. "They're about to learn just how wrong they are." Operation Thunderstrike. The hegemony attacked at dawn. Their ships descended through Earth's atmosphere in perfect formation, energy weapons turning swaths of empty terrain into glass as a show of force. Massive dropships deployed their ground forces, towering mechanized walkers and sleek hover tanks that made conventional military vehicles look like antiques. From her command center deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Sarah Chen watched the alien forces spread across multiple continents. The hegemony had chosen their landing zones carefully, targeting what they perceived as Earth's major military installations. What they didn't realize was that most of those installations were now decoys. "All units, maintain positions," she ordered, her voice carrying to military commanders worldwide. "Let them think they have the initiative." On her tactical display, she could see the XM-1P units hidden in carefully prepared positions, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. First Speaker Lysix's image appeared on every screen and communication device on Earth, its crystalline form pulsing with smug satisfaction. Your time has expired. We gave you the opportunity to join us peacefully. Now, we will demonstrate the price of defiance. The alien forces began their advance. Their walkers moved with incredible precision, energy shields shimming around them like soap bubbles. Their hover tanks glided across the terrain, sensors scanning for resistance. Above them, smaller craft provided air support, their advanced technology making them nearly invisible to conventional radar. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Nearly invisible wasn't the same as completely invisible. Operation Thunderstrike is a go, she announced. All units, execute your orders. Across the globe, humanity's response began, but it wasn't the desperate, uncoordinated resistance the hegemony expected. Instead, it was a carefully choreographed dance of deception and strategic precision. The first phase began in the plains of Kazakhstan, where a column of hegemony walkers was advancing on what they thought was a key military installation. The alien sensors detected a group of Earth tanks moving to intercept them, exactly what they'd expected from these primitives. Pathetic, the hegemony commander transmitted on an open channel. They mean to fight our advanced forces with these obsolete machines. The alien walkers opened fire, their energy weapons lancing out at the approaching tanks. But their shots passed through empty air. The tanks they were seeing were holograms, projected by hidden emitters using technology reverse engineered from the hegemony's own systems. The real attack came from behind and below. XM-1P units, concealed in underground bunkers, emerged like mechanical predators. Their main guns roared in perfect synchronization, modified shells streaking toward the unsuspecting alien forces. The hegemony commander had just enough time to realize something was wrong before the shells struck their shields. For a split second, reality seemed to twist as the quantum fields interacted. Then the aliens' supposedly impenetrable defenses collapsed in a cascade of energy. Secondary explosions rippled through their formation as the quantum feedback loop turned their own shield generators into weapons. Walkers stumbled and fell, their crews unable to comprehend what was happening. The few shots they managed to fire in return were absorbed by the tank's hybrid defensive systems, another innovation they hadn't expected. Similar scenes played out across the globe. In the Amazon rainforest, hegemony hover tanks found their advanced sensors scrambled by devices that turned the natural electromagnetic fields of the Earth against them. In the Australian outback, alien aircraft discovered that their stealth systems were worse than useless against Earth's new hybrid tracking systems. But it was in the mountains of Colorado that Sarah's true strategy was revealed. The hegemony had committed a massive force to what they believed was Earth's primary military command center. Instead, they found themselves caught in the most elaborate trap of all. Target their command and control nodes, Sarah ordered as XM-1P units emerged from hidden mountain bunkers. Show them exactly what happens when you underestimate humanity. The alien forces found themselves surrounded, their technological advantages neutralized by weapons they hadn't believed possible. Earth tanks, dismissed as primitive, tore through their formations with devastating precision. Each shot was calculated to create maximum disruption in their defensive systems, turning their own technology against them. In orbit, the hegemony ships registered the destruction of their ground forces with growing alarm. This wasn't supposed to be possible. These humans, these primitives, had somehow developed countermeasures to technology it had taken the hegemony centuries to perfect. First Speaker Lysix's form flickered with what xenolinguists would later identify as pure shock. How? It demanded, its transmission reaching every command center on Earth. How have you done this? Sarah's response was broadcast globally, her voice calm but carrying an edge of steel. You gave us a week and expected us to cower. Instead, you gave us time to study your weaknesses. You showed us your technology, thinking we couldn't possibly understand it. But humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology. It's our ability to adapt, to innovate, to take what we have and make it into something you never imagined possible. The battle continued to rage, but the outcome was already becoming clear. The hegemony's ground forces, cut off from their orbital support and their defensive systems in chaos, began to retreat. Their perfect formations dissolved into desperate attempts to escape the very primitives they had come to subjugate. But Sarah wasn't finished. As the alien forces fell back, she transmitted one final message to their command ships. You came here thinking you would find easy prey. Instead, you found humanity. Remember this day. Remember what happened when you thought you could simply walk in and take our world. And remember that what you've seen today is just the beginning of what we can do. As the sun set on the first day of battle, the hegemony's surviving forces were in full retreat. Their invincible armada had been humbled not by superior technology, but by humanity's unique combination of innovation, determination, and the ability to turn an enemy's strength into a weakness. In her command center, Sarah watched the tactical displays showing the retreating alien forces. Send word to all commands, she ordered. Phase 1 is complete. Prepare for Phase 2. Let's show them that humanity isn't just defending our world. We're ready to take the fight to them. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. Yet for the first time, the galaxy was about to learn a crucial lesson. Never underestimate a species that has spent its entire history overcoming impossible odds. Breaking point. The hegemony's response to their defeat was swift and terrible. Their initial invasion force had been merely the vanguard. Now they deployed their true military might. The Eternal Fleet emerged from hyperspace, 10,000 ships strong, led by Grand Admiral Sarketh himself. The crystalline commander's reputation for ruthlessness was legendary across 3 galaxies. You have impressed us, humans. Sarketh's transmission resonated through every communication system on Earth. His crystalline form pulsed with colors that their xenolinguists hadn't seen before, patterns that suggested both rage and respect. No species has bloodied our nose like this in 10,000 years, but now you face the full might of the hegemony. Surrender, and we will grant you a place of honor among our protectorate races. In the command center, Sarah Chen studied the tactical displays showing the massive alien fleet. The sheer scale of it was breathtaking. They could have probably conquered Earth a dozen times over with this force, but they hadn't deployed it initially, and that told her everything she needed to know about their psychology. They're rattled, she told General Morrison. They deployed their elite forces not because they need to, but because we hurt their pride. And that means they'll make mistakes. But even with their newfound advantages, humanity faced its greatest challenge yet. The Eternal Fleet's ships were different from the first wave. Their shield frequencies constantly shifted, adapting to Earth's quantum disruptor technology. Their ground forces now included the legendary Crystalline Guard, warriors whose living armor could repair itself and adapt to enemy attacks. All commands, initiate Protocol Hydra, Sarah ordered. It was time to reveal that humanity's first successful defense hadn't been their only trick. Across the globe, military installations that had appeared destroyed in the first battle suddenly came alive. The hegemony sensors had registered them as ruins, but beneath the carefully crafted debris lay humanity's next wave of innovations. Dr. Rodriguez's voice was tense but excited as he reported from his research facility. The quantum mimic systems are online. Every time they adapt their shields, we adapt faster. We're not just copying their frequency shifts, we're predicting them. The battle that followed would be remembered as humanity's finest hour. The hegemony's elite forces found themselves facing an enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move. When they adjusted their shield frequencies, Earth's weapons were already calibrated to the new wavelength. When their Crystalline Guard deployed new tactics, they found the humans had already developed countermeasures. Impossible. Sarketh's transmission betrayed his growing frustration. How are you doing this? How can primitives match the technology we've developed over millennia? Sarah's response was broadcast across all frequencies. Because we're not trying to match your technology. We're thinking differently. Every adaptation you make follows patterns you've developed over thousands of years. But humanity, we improvise, we innovate, we do the unexpected. The truth was, Earth's forces were taking heavy losses. The hegemony's superior numbers and raw technological power were overwhelming. But humanity had learned something crucial from studying their first encounters. The hegemony's greatest weakness was their rigid thinking. In orbit, Earth's newly launched defense platforms didn't try to match the alien ship's energy weapons. Instead, they used modified mass drivers to launch clouds of primitive projectiles that, when struck by hegemony weapons, created localized quantum storms that crippled their ships. On the ground, the XM-1P tanks had been joined by even more hybrid weapons. Mobile artillery pieces fired shells that split into thousands of quantum-linked submunitions, creating webs of disruption that trapped and disabled the mighty crystalline guard. Drone swarms, looking deceptively simple, carried payloads that turned the aliens' own command and control networks against them. But the true genius of humanity's defense lay in its unpredictability. Every time the hegemony adapted to one tactic, Earth's forces switched to something completely different. Traditional military doctrine was combined with innovations that defied conventional logic. They expect us to either fight conventionally and lose, or to try copying their technology and fail, Sarah explained to her commanders. Instead, we're doing what humanity does best. We're taking pieces of everything we know and creating something new. The turning point came when the Crystalline Guard launched a massive assault on Earth's primary defense network. They expected to find hardened military bunkers. Instead, they found themselves fighting through seemingly abandoned cities where every piece of civilian infrastructure had been transformed into a weapon. Traffic control systems generated interference fields that disrupted their targeting systems. Power grids pulsed with frequencies that played havoc with their living armor. Even the sewage systems had been modified to distribute clouds of engineered particles that stuck to their crystalline forms and gradually degraded their ability to adapt. "This is why you're losing," Sarah transmitted to Exarcheth as his elite forces fell into chaos. "You see a primitive species using primitive technology. We see resources and possibilities you never imagined. You fight with pride and tradition. We fight with everything we have." The battle raged for days. The hegemony's overwhelming force met humanity's endless capacity for adaptation and innovation. Earth's cities burned, but for every loss, humans found new ways to fight back. For every adaptation the aliens made, humanity developed 3 new countermeasures. Finally, after a week of continuous combat, the Eternal Fleet's attacks began to falter. Not because they lacked the power to continue. They still had enough ships to glass the planet. But because for the first time in their history, they faced an enemy they couldn't predict or understand. Sarah watched as the tactical displays showed the hegemony forces pulling back, regrouping. They weren't defeated, not yet, but they had lost their aura of invincibility. More importantly, they had lost their certainty. "All commands," she broadcast, her voice carrying to every defender on Earth. "Prepare for the final phase. They thought they came here to teach us our place in the galaxy. It's time to show them that humanity's place isn't where they think it is. It's wherever we choose to make it." The stage was set for the final confrontation. But as Sarah prepared her forces for what was to come, she couldn't help but smile. The hegemony had come to Earth expecting to find primitives. Instead, they had found humanity in all its innovative, adaptable, unpredictable glory. And they were about to learn that this was only the beginning. Paradigm shift. The final battle began not with a bang, but with silence. The Eternal Fleet, still 10,000 ships strong despite their losses, had fallen back to a high orbit. Grand Admiral Xarketh's forces had regrouped, their formations perfect, their weapons primed. But they had stopped attacking. In the command center, Sarah Chen studied the tactical displays with the same focused intensity that had carried humanity through 2 weeks of impossible warfare. "They're not retreating," she observed. "They're thinking." "Is that good or bad?" General Morrison asked, her uniform showing the wear of countless sleepless nights. It's unprecedented, Dr. Rodriguez answered, looking up from his data streams. According to everything we've learned about the hegemony, they don't pause to reassess. They simply escalate until they achieve victory. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Then we've already achieved something they thought impossible. We've forced them to adapt. The hegemony's response came in the form of a transmission from Tarkith himself. His crystalline form had changed, showing patterns they'd never seen before. We have studied your tactics, analyzed your innovations, calculated every possibility, he announced. Your resistance has been instructive, but now we will show you why the hegemony has ruled the stars for 100,000 years. The Eternal Fleet began to move, but not in their usual perfect formations. They were attempting to mirror humanity's unpredictable tactics, their ships moving in chaotic patterns that defied conventional strategy. On the ground, their remaining forces began using hybrid tactics, combining their advanced technology with more primitive warfare techniques. They're trying to beat us at our own game, Sarah broadcast to all commands. Show them why that's a mistake. What followed was unlike anything in human or hegemony military history. The aliens had learned from their defeats, but they were trying to apply systematic logic to chaos, to reduce humanity's innovative spirit to a series of algorithms and patterns. They didn't understand that humanity's strength wasn't in any particular tactic or technology. It was in our ability to create, to imagine, to try things that made no sense until they worked. The XM-1P tanks led the counterattack, but not as tanks. Sarah's teams had modified them yet again, turning them into mobile platforms for a technology that hadn't existed 3 days ago. Each vehicle now generated quantum fields that didn't just disrupt the enemy's shields. They turned the very principles of alien technology against itself. All units, execute Operation Looking Glass, Sarah ordered. Across the globe, humanity's defenders put their final gambit into action. The hegemony's forces found their own technology being reflected back at them, but twisted in ways they had never imagined possible. Their energy weapons were caught in recursive loops of quantum feedback. Their adaptive shields began adapting to themselves, creating cascading failures that rippled through their formations. But it was in orbit that humanity revealed its true masterstroke. The seemingly primitive satellites they had launched during the previous battles weren't weapons at all. They were parts of a vast quantum network that had been gathering data on every aspect of hegemony technology. You wanted to see if we could think like you, Sarah transmitted to Exarcheth. But that was never our goal. We didn't want to copy your way of thinking. We wanted to show you a completely new way to think. The quantum network activated, and the space around Earth transformed. The principles that made the hegemony's technology work began to break down, not through brute force or superior technology, but through humanity's understanding of the fundamental rules and our willingness to break them. Zarketh's transmission showed colors of confusion, then something their xenolinguists identified as awe. What have you done? We looked at your technology and saw not just what it was, but what it could be, Sarah replied. You've spent 100,000 years perfecting your understanding of the universe. We spent 2 weeks learning how to turn that understanding on its head. The Eternal Fleet hung in space, their perfect technology rendered uncertain by principles they had never considered. They still had the power to destroy Earth many times over, but for the first time in their history, they faced an enemy who had not just defeated their forces, but challenged their entire understanding of what was possible. You could still burn our world to ash, Sarah continued, but you won't. Not because you can't, but because you finally realize what makes humanity different. We don't just adapt to the rules. We change them. And if you destroy us, you'll lose the chance to see what else we might imagine possible. The silence that followed lasted for what felt like eternity. Then Zarketh's form shifted to entirely new patterns. In 100,000 years of conquest, no species has ever done what you have done. You have not just resisted us. You have shown us that our understanding of the universe is incomplete. The hegemony ships began to withdraw, not in defeat, but in something that looked remarkably like respect. "We came to offer you a place as our protectorate," Exarcheth announced. "Instead, we offer you something we have never offered before: partnership. Your species has much to teach us about the art of possibility." In the aftermath, as Earth began to rebuild, humanity found itself in a position no one could have imagined weeks ago. The hegemony, humbled but enlightened, opened their vast archives of knowledge to Earth. But they didn't just want to teach, they wanted to learn. Humanity's ability to innovate, to imagine new possibilities, had shown them that true advancement comes not from perfecting what you know, but from being willing to question everything you think you understand. Sarah stood in the rebuilt command center, watching as the first human ships began testing drives based on hybrid human hegemony technology. They weren't just copies of alien tech, they were something entirely new, born from the combination of hegemony knowledge and human creativity. "They thought they came to conquer us," she told her team. Instead, they discovered something they needed more than another conquered world. They found a species that could show them new ways to look at the universe. Humanity had earned its place among the stars not through superior technology or military might, but through our unique ability to imagine possibilities that no one else had ever considered. The galaxy would never be the same, and neither would we. As Earth's first true starships prepared to launch, carrying human innovators and scientists to share knowledge with their former enemies, Sarah couldn't help but smile at the irony. The hegemony had come to teach humanity its place in the universe. Instead, humanity had taught them that the universe was far more interesting than they had ever imagined. It was the beginning of a new era, not just for Earth, but for all spacefaring civilizations, and it had begun because humanity refused to accept that anything was truly impossible.